Hello there. Welcome back to meetrabbits.org. Thanks for being here. Thanks for continuing to listen and hopefully learn from these videos. So this is again a part of our series about exploring the different options and opportunities that foraged foods and some of our garden foods or orchards can offer us. And today I'm talking about blackberries. So blackberry is very similar in use and options as raspberry is. And in fact, in some of the research, depending where you access it, you might see blackberry promoted even ahead of, or even a little more information about blackberry as raspberry, which was interesting to me when I started looking it up, because raspberry comes up a lot in discussions in forums, the Facebook meet rabbit groups, you know, those different places. But in the literature, blackberry comes up a little more. Blackberry, like raspberry, is considered a tonic weed. That's kind of a term that was kind of engaged by Rise and Shine Rabbitry, so Boyd Craven Jr., and I'm sorry, but the other author's name escapes me, but these are the authors of the Beyond the Pellet book. So they've done a lot of work putting together, you know, different plants that can work together as a feed to replace pellets or supplement pellets if you're interested in feeding something other than commercial pellets. So, you know, first of all, what we want to say about that, like they would say, is that if you're going to try and feed a diet like that, and we're mostly talking here about blackberry and these other things as kind of a supplement, an addition, a treat, something that can be used as kind of a naturopathic solution, treatment. I don't really want to say medication, but along those lines for different ailments that might occur in your rabbits. But if you are interested in foraging feeds, you need to be aware that you need a real variety of plants, and blackberry is a good one to include in that. But rabbits need to be getting their nutrients from a range of plants, just like a wild rabbit would. They're not coming out and just eating one thing in the lawn. They're coming out, they're picking at the clover, they're picking at the raspberries, the blackberries, all sorts of stuff in nature. And by doing that, you know, they kind of accidentally, by default, collect a lot of things that support their health and their immune system. So that's sort of where we're heading with the conversations about these different plants. But again, if you're going to kind of recreate, or if you want to supplement or something, it's not an all or nothing. You use the tools, but you use different tools. But when you are talking about more of a supplement or something to target a specific condition, then that's a little different situation, because, you know, you maybe can get away with just one or two things targeted at a specific condition or ailment. The idea there is that your feed base is coming off something else, something like a pellet, hay in combination, and that you're feeding this as a supplement or a treat on top of that. So the blackberry is almost interchangeable with the raspberry. I mean, I'd go as far as to say that it is, botanically, I don't know, I guess I've always taken it for granted and never really thought much about how closely related the plants are, but I suspect they're very closely related. I'm sure someone out there knows a whole lot more about that than me. You know, I just grew up in the country where we foraged and picked and ran and play and popped raspberries and blackberries and whatever other berries we came across. We were educated and taught what not to eat and what to eat. So, you know, there you have it. I just never had much of a need to think too far about it. But blackberry, if you have it in your yard or property, you can see here, I've got it along the wood lines. I have a few that I planted and a few I think that just volunteered themselves from the birds in my berry rows. But, you know, if you've got it, you've got it, and you're not going to have to look too far to forage for it. And if you don't, then, you know, if you have a wild stash around, you could even dig some of that, establish your own stash, buy some plants, put them in. You know, the berries are large, even on the wild ones. That's kind of one of the nice things about blackberries. You can see ours are we're just starting to get into ripening on the blackberries. I also think birds may be hitting these kind of hard too, which is fine. But yeah, you know, it's not like a lot of the other berries where we kind of want cultivated varieties so that we get big berry size. Blackberries are just naturally large and prolific, to the point where a lot of people might even consider them a problem and kind of invasive. So let's talk about some of the uses for blackberry and the parts of the plant that you're going to use. So the berries are okay and have, you know, some vitamins, minerals, nutrients that can benefit the rabbits, but they also have a fair sugar content, so you want to feed those sparingly. Literally, you know, 2 or 3 berries is enough for a rabbit, even an adult rabbit. A younger rabbit, I probably wouldn't feed more than 1 at a time. And then the other parts, probably the most popularly used part is the leaf, similar to the raspberry. Easy to forage, easy to dry, easy to even cut canes and dry them, and then just feed kind of whole sticks. The canes and the stems are fine for rabbits to eat. Now, me personally, I feel like I would want to get some of the smaller stems that don't have the thorns, or maybe even try and strip off some thorns. I don't know, that sounds like a miserable job, but I don't know. So, you know, chime in if you've fed them with the thorns on. Nothing's really clear in the literature about that, but I can't imagine that that's a great idea, because I feel like you would be inviting splinters and abscesses in your rabbits' mouths, possibly even feet and stuff, if you're putting that cane in on the cage and they step on it. So I would probably go more for like the tips and just kind of strip off those few thorns. That's what I'd be going for if I were going to feed the canes. But what I would mostly go for is the leaves. And this has blackberry leaves have very similar properties that the raspberries do, in that they can be good pregnancy support for tone and reproduction and muscle tone, kind of helping rabbits along if they've got some retained placenta or kits. Feed the blackberry leaf, try to help them along in completing that process. It can stimulate the appetite, so if you've got a rabbit that's coming off feed, maybe try and give some blackberry leaf in there and try and get them eating again. Just like raspberry leaf, it's a treatment for diarrhea and a prevention for diarrhea. So again, this might be a time that I look to the blackberry leaf to maybe get some of those kits through, like the weaning enteritis stages, those weeks, that 6 to 8 week, maybe even 10 or 12, just when they're more prone to issues of diarrhea for no good reason other than their age. This might help walk you through that process. They also increase circulation, and therefore they can increase circulation to the ears, which can help cool rabbits in hot weather. So good thing to be picking in your heat waves and your higher heat, and just supplementing over the top of the feed. It's also said to be quite soothing for the rabbits. Not entirely sure what mechanism by which that happens, but it is said to be a soothing feed. Now, blackberry and raspberry both are considered one of your safer forage feeds, because they're not too hard to take. You know, you usually don't have adverse reactions, and typically your worst reaction with introducing a new feed to rabbits is going to be diarrhea, and this should help prevent that. So it's probably, if you want to start with a foraged feed or something to help kind of overcome some issues like that, raspberry and blackberry are both pretty good for that. Again, as far as foraging, go out, find some, cut some, try to avoid anything that's been sprayed with herbicides or fungicides. Roadside, just maybe be aware of what may or may not have been sprayed on the roadsides where you live, and consider that. But other than that, you're really just gathering. Let those leaves dry down, or dry them in a dehydrator, a low temp dehydrator, and you'll be good to go. You could also buy it as a tea, or from an herbal or tea making company if you didn't have a source and you wanted to get some in your kind of rabbit toolkit. that would be a good way to do it. And it's light and cheap, and you know, a single bag is gonna cover you for a long time. So hope this helps, hope this gives you more insight. Come on over to meetrabbits.org, read the accompanying article to learn more, and also see the other forage topic feeds and weeds that we've got over there, like elderflower, raspberry, and we'll be adding more in the future. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.